Good morning, everyone. So one of the things that's really important right now as we look toward recovery of our businesses and recovery of the economy, one of the things that we have to remember is that recovery is not an event, it's a process. And so I thought today I'd share with you a few things that might help you as you move forward yourself, as well as you help your teams move forward in this recovery process. It's not an event, it's a process that we need to go through. So there's three things that we need to remember. The first one is about responsibility. And so responsibility meaning what is our mindset? How do we manage our emotions and self-regulate our emotions? Because we're going to have triggers, aren't we? Some of us are going to feel excited about going back to work, whether that's physically in the working environment or whether that's still at home. Some of us are going to be maybe a little bit uncertain, a bit fearful, a bit worried. Some of us are going to be hopeful and inspired. So understanding where our mindset is really important. Not only for ourselves as leaders, but also our people. Where are they? Where's their mindset? How do we manage our emotions and self-regulate? So that's a really important part of emotional intelligence, isn't it? Knowing when we're triggered and how we can take a moment to pause and then just choose our response. That's not always easy. And the last piece here is choice. So choosing my mindset, choosing my emotions or my emotional reaction, and that all comes under the state of responsibility. So for yourself and also your people. The second piece, when we're looking at the recovery process, as opposed to it being an event, is reparation. And so reparation meaning how do we repair the harm or how do we repair the experience that people have had? Now, over the last couple of months, we've all had different experiences, and some days we might have been upset. The next day we might be really excited or feeling really calm about things. So knowing where your people are at and where you're at any moment in time is going to be really important for the recovery of your business, because we're talking about culture, we're talking about community, and that's what drives the results in your business. So when we're talking about reparation, that's about how do we draw the line in the sand between the past and the future. How do we help our people move forward? If you've ever tried to drag a toddler out the hallway as you're trying to get out the door and they're kicking and screaming and they don't really want to go anywhere, then you'll know that trying to drag someone where they don't want to go is almost impossible. But if we can be with them, if we can sit and have a chat, or if we can listen and create a space, people will want to move forward. We've just got to create a space of trust and safety where they can draw the line themselves. So that's a state of self-empowerment. So helping your people find that space of self-empowerment is your leadership, emotional intelligence skills that come into play there. And that's about listening, the quality of your listening, and that's about the quality of your high-quality questions. So those two skills in leadership are so important when we're empowering people, aren't they? So what's the quality of your listening, and what kind of questions are you asking? Are you just asking, hey, how are you today? Or are you sitting down, creating a state of presence and asking them, talk to me about what's going on for you today? That's really important to help people find that state of self-empowerment so they can move themselves forward. And then the last piece here then is what I would call integration, or reintegration. And that piece there is about trust. That's about helping people move back into the working place, whether that's physical or emotional, whether that's cultural or relational. Yep. How can we help them move back into the working place so they can move forward? So that's about trust. And that's also about knowing the difference between commitment and engagement. And what I mean by that is, commitment will have someone show up at work, whether that's in the office or whether that's at home. Engagement will have them buy in and lean in. Sometimes we confuse the two and we think because they've shown up, they're engaged. Now we know with engagement statistics around the world and in Australia, that's not true. Just because people are showing up doesn't mean they're engaged. And right now, after this crisis, and as we move through this crisis and the different stages of it, people will have their own emotional journeys. Now, it's not your job to be a counsellor or a therapist, but it is your job to be a leader and a coach. So knowing the difference between commitment and engagement is really important so you can meet your people where they're at and not assume they're engaged because they're showing up. Yeah? So this whole process then is about recovery. So as you move forward in your leadership with your teams and your business, remember responsibility, mindset, emotional reactions and choice, reparation, helping them draw the line in the sand so they can do it themselves, and then reintegration. That's about trust and knowing the difference between commitment and engagement so that you can create the way forward together. Now this is like having three or more spinning plates, having them all going at the same time. Yep, they're all important, and if you bring them all together and make sure that you're listening out for all of these things, that will allow your people to start to build a positive momentum where they want to go and where you need them to go. This process here comes from a methodology called restorative practices, and it's part of my background. And there was a time where I worked in the youth justice system, and it was an incredible privilege to do this work. And one of the moments I remember really profoundly and still stays with me to this day is a situation or a moment in time where a man was asleep with his family at home in the middle of the night, and he heard some ruckus outside in his front yard. And he woke up, turned off all the lights in the home, as you would if you hear some noises, ran outside to find out what was happening. And there was a bunch of teenagers with, making noise and kind of tossing over letterboxes and things like that. And as he came outside, a few of them ran away, but a few of them stayed. And as he turned around to find safety back in his home, one of the teenagers walked up behind him and bashed him over the head with a piece of wood. Now this man survived, but he lost the hearing in one of his ears. It was a significant event in his life and in the lives of his family. And through the restorative practices, conferences and processes, these people came together to have a conversation about what had happened and to take responsibility for what that young person did, to repair the harm, so to hear each other and what was going on for each other and what had happened to the man and his family, and so that they could reintegrate back into their lives, to be able to draw the line in the sand, do what they needed to do to move forward. These processes have a certain framework, require certain kind of listening and questions, and this work now, restorative practices, is moving into business. It's well known around the world, but it's new in Australia, and especially in times like this of crisis, when people are trying to move forward but don't always know how, your job as a leader is to help them know how. And you can do that through these three things. Now, this man who sat in front of this young person and they got to share their stories, the young person was required to speak about what he did and how he felt when he was doing it, help the victim and his family understand why it was his yard that those teenagers turned up on at that night and why it was him that he'd bashed on the head. And so through that process of conversation, of being together and showing up together in responsibility and in courage, they were able to move forward in their individual lives, but move forward in a way that they wouldn't have been able to if they hadn't had that chance to have that conversation. These are unique conversations that support human beings to move forward through emotions, through challenging mindsets. And this is a process that will help you. So I hope this has been valuable. Remember, these three things will help you if you practice them in yourself and also make a space for your team. Thanks very much for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you soon.